Good evening. Welcome to GC's Book Club. Tonight, in store, as you can probably see, we have Eileen by Ottessa Moshfegh. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. I'm going to pretend like I've got a schedule to get through here, but I'm very happy for him. I know anyway. I'm aware of James Flynn. Yeah, Eileen. Well, I take it a few people read it. If I'm honest, I'll get onto what I thought of it. But let's I'm going to read the synopsis because I'm actually mildly curious as to how they tried to sell this. So here we are. My name was Eileen Dunlop. Now you know me. I was 24 years old then, and I had a job. Is this the fucking synopsis? Okay. Okay, now this is just a section from the book, I think. So give me a second here. I'm just trying to... Played out against the snowy landscape of coastal New England in the days leading up to Christmas, young Eileen's story is told from the gimlet-eyed perspective of the now much older narrator. Creepy, mesmerising and sublimely funny. In the tradition of Shirley Jackson and early Vladimir Nabokov. I don't know... Okay. This powerful debut novel enthralls and shocks and introduces one of the most original new voices in contemporary literature. Ottessa Moshfegh, I might be saying her name wrong by the way, but I'm just going with it, is also the author of My Year of Rest and Relaxation, Homesick for Another World, Stories and McGlue. Well, I'll tell you what I thought of it. I thought it was a load of shit. Possibly the dullest novel I've read for a long time. Like I can't... But I'm almost glad it's mentioned. It's told from the gimlet-eyed perspective of the now much older narrator. Yeah, very much so. Very, very much so. What I got from that was that Eileen is a 24-year-old femcel virgin who still lives with her cartoonish alcoholic father. She works at a juvenile delinquent correction kind of centre as I'm not really sure what her job was, filing about. I think that was about it because she doesn't socialise really with anyone. She just kind of looks at Musclehead, this Musclehead guy, and that goes nowhere. The relationship she has with the other women, aside from one who comes in later on just as a plot device, is non-existent. She pervs over one of the kids when he starts jacking off at some point, but not really much, in all honesty. And she drinks a little bit, father like daughter, I guess. And it's basically just self-obsessed to the point that it's so boring to read. I was just like, and there were moments at the beginning where I was wondering, like, I remember a passage for about a good couple of paragraphs, and nearly every other sentence was I this, I that, my this, me that. Like everything was just so self-oriented. And then she did show a modicum of self-awareness when she addressed how self-obsessive she was. But it was just like in this element of like, oh, that's just how I am. Deal with it, like, take it or leave it. Well, I wish I left it, to be honest, because the whole novel seems to be gearing towards something happening, and nothing does. Nothing, like apart from like right at the end, which we will get to. But the most annoying thing about it was exactly this older narrator. So she's telling it from an older perspective, which she never really alludes to in terms of how old, but we do at some point get to know that she's old, basically. Like, I'd guess 60, 70, something like that. But this plot device is the most pointless thing I think I've ever seen in a novel, because at the beginning you're a little bit like, okay, it's interesting ish. I mean, maybe this is going to lead somewhere. It doesn't. All it seems to be is her trying to reassure you that she wasn't always fucking boring and this awkward and weird. And she's just telling you like, yeah, I might have been scared of cock at this point, but in the future I get married a few times and I get myself plenty of ass and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, why are you telling me this? I don't understand. Is this supposed to be interesting? Like, it's not funny. It's if anything, it just comes across as pathetic. And every time you kind of made the mistake of getting into the novel, she fucking slices the verisimilitude in half she just keeps interrupting all the time, like with her like, I was silly me at 24, like why I can't believe I was like this, trust me, I'm way different now. Or other things where she mentions characters and then says, oh, but this isn't their story, it's mine, so moving on, and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, since when is being this obtuse somehow charming? Like I didn't really get it. She was annoying, and if anything, she was just dull. And in a lot of ways, it actually did start to remind me of like The Great Gatsby, because it was like, it's called Eileen, and yet Eileen is a passenger in the story. Really, she doesn't do anything, and she only takes some sort of action when other characters, or one other character, kind of puts her in a position where she has no other choice. And even that I thought was contentious when I thought about it at the end. So I was just like, what the fuck is this story? And also that older narrator keeps going on about, oh yeah, I'm going to get out of Xville, is what she calls it. Some place in wherever it is, New England. Very snowy, cold, kind of nothing kind of area. And just constantly going on about, oh yeah, this is my like final week in Xville. Or this is in the last few days of Xville, and all this. And I was always thinking, like, is this taking the piss? Like, I honestly thought, like, how is this supposed to be engaging at some point? And I was going to try and come into this and be positive, or at least give the positives about it, which I'll try and do now for the sake of whatever. I found that the world building wasn't bad. At least I could envision it quite well. But the only thing I'd say about that is I think it's more to do with movies and other media that I've consumed, that I can just conjure this kind of place up quite easily. It's a run-of-the-mill kind of area, not much going on. People work blue-collar jobs, live in moderate housing. There's a pub. There's, all of the amenities that you could think of, but it's pretty dead end, basically. Like, there's nothing else going on in these places. Fine. She built that well enough, I thought. And I thought the only somewhat redeeming quality of her character, and this is a very small part, was that I could relate to her neglect a bit. Like, I know what that's like. But it didn't make an interesting character. I just thought she's a kook. Like, that's all she is. Like, I didn't think she was smart. I didn't think she was witty. I didn't think she had guile or cunning. or she didn't have any balls either. She was a complete coward, and that could have been fine if she wasn't then interrupting all the time from her older perspective to kind of reassure us, like, oh no, this is just when I was this age. Trust me, I had my fair share of fun. It's almost like that weirdo friend who insists on kind of like detailing, usually if it's a guy, his sex life. That's what it felt like to me. It was just like constantly like, oh yeah, I did that, dude. You know, yeah, of course. Not now, but in the future. Yeah. I went there. Oh yeah, you should see. And there is an underhanded misandry in this that I think a lot of feminist literature is very guilty of in the modern age. And I'm gonna just say it. Yeah, it's clearly misandrist at times, because it's like, it seems totally fine with just being like, oh, this is before I experienced men. This is what men are, all men. Like a constant, like little, like they weren't that blatant, but they were there quite a lot. And it was just like, so you have these views of men, fine, whatever. I'm down with that. But at the same time, you were very happy to just go through, you know, next to the next to the next, even though that isn't part of the story. Like, why are you telling me this? I don't understand the point. It does. I'm probably going to repeat myself because I was just frustrated reading it, thinking like, because all of this filler serves no purpose, and really, if you cut it out of the novel, along with other drivel about her sister who's forever off screen, like we don't ever meet her, so really, apart from like what impact that had on her, I don't see the point of mentioning Joni. The mother too, except maybe when she died, but whatever. The father was like ridiculous, like to the point where it's like, okay, I didn't mind his mental illness side. That was kind of fine. Like it made him mildly interesting, but really it only served as a plot device to get her a gun at some point, so that could move the fucking story along finally. Even though I would actually say that there is no story really. It props it up as being something of like, oh, this is how I escaped my hellishly boring existence back in the day, but really I didn't actually do anything, and it was only because of this mystical, magical white woman who walks into it, and for no reason other than that, by the way. And it was like, what is this shit? Like this book is proof. Glad you mentioned publishing. This book is proof that if you get published, it means absolutely nothing. Like it means it's just people in the industry who were, look, there were a few quips and anecdotes saying like, oh, like the Literary Times in New York or something, saying like, oh, you've never read anything like Eileen before. And it's like, yeah, there's a good reason for that. It sucks. I can't understand how it got the go-ahead. Like, what poor fucking editor had to go through this shit and just be like, oh yeah, maybe we should like cut out the endlessly boring drivel about this old woman trying to reassure us that her main character of herself isn't so dull and boring. Is like, okay, what a joke. I was like, I'll get more into the plot. I need to let the rants out because yeah. Anyway, let me see what you thank you for indulging me. Let me get into this. It was shit. Yeah, if I was to sum it up, it was shit. Like, I was kind of like I was thinking afterwards, like, it was okay, maybe. But the more I thought about it, I was like, nah, it wasn't actually. It was really boring. I actually finished it today because there was nothing about it that was really enticing me to go back to it. It's only through habit of reading at certain times of the day that I was getting through it. But I realised I had like 80 pages to go, and I thought, oh Christ, okay, fine. I did get mildly intrigued when a certain plot point happens, but it's too late in the day, and it felt so gimmicky by that point. Like it was almost like it was comical, like it says in this synopsis that it's funny. It's funny, but it's funny because it's so stupid. Like that's the only thing I could really fathom. So I'll just brief over the summary, like what I'm getting on about, in a second. Yeah, it was all that. It was all just and that was so tedious after a while. It was like, what kind of narrator keeps you like just like, oh yeah, we'll get to this. I'm mentioning this person now. Why? Like, what's the point? Is it just so we feel like we know about this? Like we're getting inside information of a what? Why? Like I didn't understand what the point of this was at all. Actually, like it didn't subvert tropes or some other shit that it was. I read a few reviews saying like it was subverting the femme fatale figure and all this kind of stuff, and it was like, no, it wasn't. Unless it was like the femme fatale, but one who is just the total opposite of a real femme fatale, which would make in a maybe a satire version. But the sentences are so stilted and lacking any sort of elegance and any sort of flow. Like it really feels just like your run-of-the-mill commercial fiction where everything's kind of spelt out to you. Even like what's going to happen later is kind of hinted at constantly in these. You know, there's no charm in it at all. And I was just amazed reading it, sort of thinking like, and there were like parts of it where it would get into like a dialogue scene or something, and then you turn the page and you just see this like block of prose again, and you're like, what's she gonna start fucking talking about now? Like, oh, this reminds me of this other time I was like, and it was constantly like that all the time. Like, why is she pissing all over her own fucking story? Like, I don't care about your little antics that you got up to. You're in the middle of the scene. Keep with the scene. The scene was fine. You didn't need to start chiming in with your boring fucking like. She mentioned she marries a Russian man at some point. Why? Why are you telling me this? I don't care. Like, you're not a femme fatale if everything you've done is after the fact. Like it's like, why? I don't get it. Very perplexing in terms of character development, because it was so lazy as well. Like it was almost, I honestly felt like maybe that was the piss take part. Like, oh, you know, this is me building a character. You know. But yeah, let me cows but boring. Well, in a weird way, yeah. The relationship she has with her dad, I would say that it's a bit of a Great Gatsby, but with poor people, mixed with some hilarious Thelma and Louising sleuth bullshit right at the end, where it is so ridiculous, like, and just there for like what reason? Like, I didn't understand. Was this that was the moment we were all waiting for as well? Like, oh, the big climax, the fucking biggest anti-climax I think I've ever read toward. But yeah, so to summarize the story, Eileen's working in this correctional facility for juveniles. There's not really much relevant to that. I mean, there is a little bit, I suppose, the way it kind of ties it in, kind of, but only in this one case. And really, it's not Eileen's story. It's more to do with this Rebecca character who comes in too late. And I did question for a while. I was like, is this just like some projection of Eileen's? Is this character even real? Like, I thought it was going to do some Fight Club shit, because there was all these similarities between them, and then they do this name swapping in the bar, and no, it wasn't any of that. It was just this new employee who was there to try and educate the boys who had been put in, under, well, punishment. And she was supposed to do it with the finer things in life and all this, and she's this larger than life debonair, very noirish type of. She's probably more the femme fatale ish, I guess, or at least the idealization of it in, I would say, Eileen's eyes. And Eileen falls in love with her like instantly, pretty much, mainly because no one gives a fuck about her, and this woman actually seems to see her, but she only does so out of her own stratagem, really. But I think they do get along, or whatever that fucking means. And yeah, this character isn't really introduced until I think over the halfway mark, easily. And I'd struggle to tell you what happens before that. Aside from the book setting up, her life situation while she's looking after her dad and all this kind of thing. But there's just these endless, like, it feels like the scenes are kind of pointless until Rebecca turns up. There is a scene with this other kid who's in the facility who she catches masturbating, and she's like perving on him, but it why it's there is it's sort of somewhat relevant, or at least it turns out to be, I guess. But so yeah, once Rebecca's there, it gets pretty exciting. They go to a bar and the men flirt with them a bit, and then Eileen decides to stay there because she's liking it. And then she gets too drunk, and she crashes the car into snow on the way home, wakes up in her own vomit, all this kind of shit. She manages to get back to work, and then there's a bit of a weird scene with this Rebecca character and the kid I was just talking about. She gets a bit close to him, and that makes Eileen a bit suspicious for about 2 minutes. And then because it's nearing to Christmas, Rebecca asks her to come over for a drink. She agrees to it, and goes there after getting Daddy some gin. That's just there. She gets her dad gin a lot. Yeah. But when she gets to the house, she's a bit disappointed because she expected it to be all elegant and flash and all this. And then we get the bombshell. It's not her house. It's the house of the woman, the mother of the kid who is in the correctional facility. Because Rebecca suspects that the mum had something to do with the reason why the kid's in there, and the reason the kid's in there is because the daddy was raping him, and one night the kid slit his throat. And what the kid reckoned, which he confided in Rebecca, of course, is that mummy was actually helping daddy to do this by whatever reason. And then so she's basically kidnapped her in her own home and tied her up and put her in the basement, and she brings Eileen in on the predicament. And then they have this ridiculous scene where they're trying to get a confession out of the woman for reasons, I guess, that are supposed to be for this kid who's obviously going to spend the rest of his life in prison for doing what he's done. Yeah, that's the kind of the thing that the big reveal, let's say. They get the woman to confess, and it seems like the only reason she was giving the kid enemas was because when daddy raped him, he would be closer to mummy, and mummy would get to be fucked again, but she was getting a lot of infections because obviously of her son's dirty arsehole. I presume, I'm not even joking, this is like what the whole premise was. So the only reason the mum actually like was trying to make sure not that the kid was all right, just more that he wasn't going to give her the clap or whatever. And yeah, then the kid said enough's enough, fuck this, slits daddy's. I mean, this is I described this, but it's not really depicted that much because it's not really part of the story. It's just part of this side quest in Eileen's story, and it's only really used as the reason that she ends up leaving Xville. To be honest, that's all it's in there for, because once they get the confession out of her in this very cartoonish sleuth scene. I think Rebecca drops the gun, because of course she does, and it goes off and it shoots the woman in the arm. And then they're like, oh fuck, what are we going to do? And Eileen concocts this plan, which I won't detail because it doesn't happen, but she comes up with this devious plan to kind of basically frame her own father. But she doesn't go through with that in the end. What she does instead is goes back home, gets her money, drives out, leaves the woman unconscious, presumably, at the side of the road, and then just hitchhikes it out of there, and ends up meeting a man in a porn theatre who she will marry, probably just to change her name. And for some reason, this is the big reason why she had to escape. And I was kind of thinking about it, going, why? I don't even think she'd get in trouble for this, really. Like, she wasn't the one who abducted or, kept the woman in question hostage. It was Rebecca. And she might be seen as an accomplice to it, but that's only if the woman comes forward and says, these two bitches were in my house. But this woman is dealing with the fact that her own son, who was getting buggered every night by the man she married, it's only if she actually tries to press charges against them, which seems pretty unlikely if the case is that she's actually dealing with this, probably because she's mental. And then maybe that was supposed to be reflective. I think it was actually trying to shoehorn that in, of like the kind of, because there was a line about the level of abuse being comparable because of Eileen's neglect. And whilst I think that was obviously a bit of a stretch, especially for some kid who's getting anally fucking butt raped on a daily basis, compared to her, which was just the fact that she was, unloved and whatever. And I do think that's a debate that's worth having, actually. I think but it doesn't delve into it in any interesting element. It's just used as a conduit for her to get out of there. And that's it. This is what everything builds towards. And Rebecca's character is also just used as a plot device. So whilst Eileen suspects that she only used her or got friendly with her as a means to an end, so did the book, as in terms of like why her character was in there in the first place, because she was really just as cartoonish and, beyond the realm of believability as was the drunken father. Admittedly, we could put that down to the perspective of Eileen, who was a kook, so maybe she glorified them in a very peculiar manner. I don't really know, but yeah, hard to piece together in that regard, but let me just go through you. Yeah, I wondered that a little bit myself, but I suppose if we're supposed, to believe the story, then she could be doing it to protect her identity or whatever still, maybe, even though one would assume that the woman in question is long dead. And yeah, it's been too long for them or any kind of authorities to give a shit, because nothing fucking happened. That's the thing. I mean, we don't really know whether the woman died or not. But even if she did, I would make no assumptions as to like them blaming it on Eileen. They probably wouldn't even look into it that much, to be honest, because she was shot in the arm, yes, possibly bled to death, yes, but they would pin it on the dad anyway, just because he had a habit of sometimes venturing out and starting to tell everyone that there were hoodlums and gangsters after him and there were people hiding in the bushes and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, she's mentioned earlier, but I mean, in terms of her actual introduction, it's just not there. Well, I mean, in fairness to her, in response to that comment as well, it was made into a film. Fuck knows how. I mean, I kept wondering, or keep wondering now, what happens in that film. Maybe if they got rid of all the drivel at the beginning, cut out this looking back element, which I assume they do unless they use a voiceover, which would be awful. Maybe the film would at least be mildly intriguing, because there's no way it can have all of the crap that it has at the beginning. Well, yeah, I mean, I was anticipating something dark, something to justify this whole, when she keeps harking back to it, keeps talking about, because I kept thinking it was a form of like overcompensation, where it was like she was dipping in to go on about her interesting life before all of this happened, and even afterwards when she was on the run or whatever. But maybe she was telling it from the perspective of being caught and was in prison herself or something. Or maybe even is like a kind of monster herself that has had a prolific paedophile career or some shit like that. I don't know. I mean, something at least intriguing. But there was just nothing. It was just like, oh, this is just some dumpy femcel escape from her existence, only to live a very average type of life, to be honest. I mean, but we don't know, because the only things we get are these little tidbits and anecdotes about dudes she got with, and now that apparently she's all happy and she loves people and all this drivel, so much of this like kind of stuff, where I'm just like, the self-obsession in it. I mean, talk about being in a narcissistic age. I mean, that's all maybe if it was supposed to be a commentary on that, it could have been intriguing. But I felt like it was always alluding to something that never really happened. And apparently I'm supposed to go, oh, amazing. Like, sure had me going, telling me something good was going to happen, something interesting, something enthralling, but never delivering on it. I mean, that was, I didn't expect that. It's like, really? Like, I just don't understand. I don't understand things. Like, I just, in general, like, how the fuck? This has like 100,000 ratings on Goodreads. Just talk about the power of marketing. Jesus. I mean, I have read My Year of Rest and Relaxation, and that, in comparison, is almost like a magnum opus. But it's not that good. That was overrated as well, I thought. And in a lot of ways, I would actually say that Eileen has similar things, because the way the narration is delivered was giving me vibes of like, okay, she's just very unreliable. Maybe this is much more to do with the way she's seeing things against the reality of what is. Maybe that's why the older narrator keeps butting in, because she's an equally mentally unwell woman who's trying to justify what she's done. Then I'm giving the novel too much credit. That was just there as a gimmick more than anything. It was pure bollocks, if I'm honest. I was kind of stunned by how much I hated it, and I'm equally stunned by just, it's won awards. The Hemingway Award for debut novel. It was nominated for the Booker. Really? Like, why? Shirley Jackson Award nominee. Why? Like, I don't get it. Like, who's eating out whose pussy in this industry these days? That's what I want to know, because there's got to be something going on here. And I'd even criticise the writing overall. Like, it's fine in a kind of generic way, but it's not particularly adventurous with the way it details things. There's not even much flow, I wouldn't say. It's very stop-start in the wrong way. Like, it's not as if we're all looking forward to when her older self is going to interrupt and give us a little anecdote of something else that she will do in the future when she isn't so uptight and self-conscious and still just as self-obsessed with how she looks, but in a different way in the future, apparently, for reasons unknown. I don't know what really changed her. Maybe the fact that she did get attention from men or something. I don't know. It seemed kind of contradictory in what. Yeah, I mean, I'd said the same thing to Anya. Like, if it was, because he would have just come across as a whiny, self-obsessed brat who didn't have, the guts to face the world and stand up to his father and all this kind of stuff. But because it's like a woman, we're supposed to be like, oh, she's so, the courage it must have taken and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, she did nothing in the whole story. And the whole thing's leading up to this like amazing escape. And even that didn't deliver. Unreal. Which one are you on? You're not Hux, are you? I'm not sure if we're acquainted on Goodreads. But it might be, that might be you. Is it, well, I can get it up actually. Let me move myself there. Because I did find this one, I mean, I won't read it all. Yeah, I thought okay, it is you, yeah. Oh, did you write this recently then? Yeah, nice. I mean, I think 2 stars is probably what I'd give it. I would say that the world building was decent, and there does seem to be potential in what she's capable of. It's just, I mean, it's interesting to me that this book is about a very self-indulgent, independent, you go girl, stunning and brave, female narrator. It's the same with My Year of Rest and Relaxation, to be honest, that she's a very self-involved. So it kind of makes me think that, something. Apparently McGlue, which is a novella, which is really the first thing she kind of put out, is more about some sailor or something like that. So I think if she actually tackled a male protagonist, maybe we'd get something a bit more or less indulgent, because with her female characters it seems to be just a given, like a birthright, that they're interesting just because they're female, and that is probably the biggest sin of the book in my view. So let me just get these comments. Lol, this is the dumbest review I've ever read. But she ran off after that. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty flabbergasted by the amount. Like, because these are just folk that I'm more familiar with. 4 stars, 5 stars. The other thing I don't get is when seeing this thing about how dark it is, and like, oh, this is so transgressive, it's so out there, and it's like, what world are people living in nowadays? It's like everyone lives in Ruby Granger's fucking universe or some shit. Like, in what world is this dark? It doesn't go into. The only thing that's kind of mildly dark is the kind of bodily fluids that get mentioned from time to time. The slightly paedophilic look insights, but they're not really there. And that, I would say, is about it. There's nothing else. I mean, maybe how grimy the house is and how dilapidated, and yeah, the neglect basically is a reflection of her, because it's like, yeah, disheveled and falling apart, all this kind of stuff, blah blah blah. It was a terrible writing. Self-loathing as a form of art. Brother doesn't know what art is. Anyway, yeah. I mean, I suppose I'll do a fucking reading at the beginning. I'm gonna get it out of the way. Just, I think maybe it will be mildly interesting to get us. Maybe it will change my perspective slightly. I'm not holding my breath. Instead, I'm gonna pour some more wine, and I'm not gonna read much of it, because I'm kind of intrigued to see if the characters change much, or at least like we feel we've got to know her. I look like a girl you'd expect to see on a city bus, reading some cloth-bound book from the library about plants or geography, perhaps wearing a net over my light brown hair. You might take me for a nursing student or a typist. Note the nervous hands, a foot-tapping, bitten lip. I look like nothing special. It's easy for me to imagine this girl, a strange young and mousy version of me, carrying an anonymous leather purse or eating from a small package of peanuts, rolling each one between her gloved fingers, sucking in her cheeks, staring anxiously out the window. The sunlight in the morning illuminated the thin down on my face, which I tried to cover with pressed powder, a shade too pink for my wan complexion. I was thin, my figure was jagged, my movements pointy and hesitant, my posture stiff. The terrain of my face was heavy with soft, rumbling acne scars, blurring whatever delight or madness lay beneath that cold and deadly New England exterior. If I'd have worn glasses, I could have passed for smart, but I was too impatient to be truly. Notice this, but you'd have expected me to enjoy the stillness of closed rooms, take comfort in dull silence, my gaze moving slowly across paper, walls, heavy curtains, thoughts, never shifting from what my eyes identified: book, desk, tree, person. But I deplored silence, I deplored stillness, I hated almost everything. I was very unhappy and angry all the time. Don't show. I tried to control myself, and that only made me more awkward, unhappier and angrier. I was like Joan of Arc or Hamlet, but born into the wrong life, the life of a nobody, a waif, invisible. There's no better way to say it. I was not myself back then. I was someone else. I was Eileen. In all honesty, it kind of makes it worse. Because the character has no development. Nothing changes. And having the older character tell us that things have changed doesn't mean that we sense it. It doesn't ensure we're going to feel that way the longer it goes on. Like, I'm baffled by this. I mean, in some ways I do think it could be a very interesting technique, but probably only if, linearly speaking, we actually get to the point that we meet the older version. So maybe if it's like a timeline where it's like 1 minute we're here, next minute we're 30 years in the future, and then you're seeing the kind of things that lead up to that kind of moment. But when it's only used in this kind of memory from some pretty mystical future, maybe I missed something, but I didn't really get any idea of what kind of life she was living. It just, apparently she was content and living the life that she wanted to live, single of course, as is the want of a modern feminist. You know, she wants to get ran through and then live alone with cats or some shit like that. Like, that seems to be what it was hinting at. I don't know, maybe she was in a retirement home. I honestly don't know. I'd like to be able to tell you, but I can't really remember her specifying anything in that regard. So if anyone can correct me on that, I'd appreciate it. But yeah, that's all it seemed to do for me. And the fact that the novel opens like that it's very weird. It's like, I would have preferred it if she was actually dead or something like that, and maybe this was like her spirit going over her life or something. I don't know, something that might have added something intriguing, or if she'd gone insane and this was like potentially like the thing that had, you know, clicked her off down a path of whatever. But I honestly can't really see any other reason for it being there other than, you know, just as a cute kind of addition to the book. You know, just fancied putting it in there. You know, why not? Let's have you know, a duality of perspective, maybe. I don't know, but it's odd to do when, you know, your current protagonist at 24 is also remembering her past. So it's like, it's almost like muddying the waters to make it seem deep in terms of, you know, narrative. But it doesn't really do that. It just adds further impetus into her being a narcissist. And I could be fine with that if that's what it was trying to get at. Like, you know, is this just the ramblings of a very narcissistic person? Fine. It kind of tries to do it occasionally, because she does mention how self-obsessed she is and all this kind of stuff, but it kind of does so as a, you know, that's just the way things are. This is what I'm like. Take it or leave it or whatever. And it was like, okay, fine. Can you continue with your story now, please? Because I don't really see any reason for you to continue to tell me this, and yet you will do that. Very strange. I don't know. It must have been a bunch of women who put this out there. There's no way. And obviously, I'm not saying that this is like a big thing. You know, that a lot of publishing houses are like this, but I would argue that there's definitely some. And I don't know how they're getting away with this shit, because that was trash. Objectively speaking, it was bad. It was at best, it was like a 4 out of 10. You know, it had the elements of a novel to some degree, or the skeleton of one, but it had none of the flesh, none of the meat, none of the bones, aside from maybe a bit of an intriguing insight into neglect. I thought I was intrigued by that element, and it was interesting to see just how far gone the relationship with the father and in her family was. I was all for that, but I didn't feel like it dealt with it enough, and it really only seemed to be there to be held up to a mirror to a kid who actually had been through some physical abuse in the opposite extreme, pretty much. But they were just used as these characters. Like, Eileen herself doesn't give a fuck about them. So what am I supposed to, or what are we as the audience supposed to get from that? I don't. That's why I just felt everything about it had an emptiness. It was hollow at its core, and really, if that's all it was trying to say, is it worth saying? I would argue no. But I mean, there are worse novels. I'll give it that much. But it's easily the worst I've covered so far on this, podcast. Because the others, by comparison, at least they had heart, and they had passion. I would say this feels almost spiritless when you get to the end of it. It feels like what was this? Just like, are we trying to like satirize the concept of a first person narrator by making it just pure self-indulgence? Is that it? Is that the idea here? Because as someone said, like, it's supposed to be self-loathing as an art, and it's like, as much as Eileen hates herself in this, she clearly loves herself as well. That's all her conflict is. She's pure me. Even when she meets this Rebecca, it's only because of how Rebecca makes her feel that she likes, She gets to be seen through the eyes of someone who she deems to be attractive, flawless to an extent. Like, it's all projection. And I mean, a few other people were saying something about how unlikable the characters are in it. I'm fine with that. I don't need them to be likable. I need them to be interesting. That's the main thing. I need them to be getting involved in things that are going to keep me reading and keep me wanting to find out why and what's going to happen. With this shit, I was only really intrigued right at the end when it put in what I would argue is a very comical moment where it was like, oh, by the way, this isn't my house. I've abducted the bitch of the kid who's at the correctional facility. Dun dun dun. And then we're in this absolute ridiculous scene. I mean, in fairness, there was some self-awareness to this scene when they're trying to interrogate the woman. It's like they knew how absurd it was. But I kind of felt like all Moshfegh was doing was acknowledging it to kind of pass it off. Basically, to kind of say like, yeah, I'm aware this is fucking dumb, but look here, I've written down like how slapstick and preposterous this is, so let's just carry on with it, shall we? It's like, what kind of bullshit, what kind of, it's like X or Deus Machina kind of shit. But a subtle version of it where it's like, as the author, I'm just telling you that I know this is shit, but we're going to go along with it anyway. Which is just as self-indulgent as the protagonist of the piece, funnily enough. So, yeah, I really don't get what the fuss is about her, if I'm honest. I mean, maybe some of her short stories are good, because I'm baffled overall. All I'm getting is like Sylvia Plath, but born with a silver spoon firmly shoved up her ass. Like, there's no way she got this because of her talent. I've heard that she's got parents who know people in the literary world, and it's like, okay, there it is. That's the reason, because it ain't on the storytelling, I'll tell you that much. And that would be fine. I mean, it could be a character thing, but if you read something like American Psycho, at least you're getting into the fucking depths, I think that book is quite overrated as well. But at least you are getting into the lunatic maelstrom that is his mind, and it does go to lengths that are just very kind of like they hit you when you finally get to them. Is that just because he goes on about his fucking Gucci suits the whole time before that? I would argue no. I think it's because it goes to the depths of depravity that it warrants a lot of the time. Whereas this, like, people saying that this is like, oh, this is so twisted. What's twisted about it? Like, I don't understand what they're talking about. read like the yellow wallpaper in 2,000 words. Gilman, I think that was her name, managed to provoke so much more in me in terms of like paranoia, fear, like anxiety, all of these types of things. Like that to me is far darker than any of the shit in this book. And it's like, this just felt like a lot of it's just filler. Eileen herself is filler in the story. That's what's maybe. Oh, she's subverting the trope of the titular character. Fuck off. And people like say Catcher in the Rye is bad. It's like, you don't know what he's fucking talking about. But yeah, well, is there anything else I want to bitch about? Probably. But well, what were some of the scenes before Rebecca comes into it? I think she steals some lipstick. She drinks a little bit. Does she buy I know she goes to a clothing store and tries on a stupid dress. I think this might be when she's already met Rebecca, in fairness. Forgive me. She tries on a sequin dress, which is totally preposterous. She's not going to a ball or a fucking premiere of a movie or whatever. But she tries it on and then steals like 5 packets of pantyhose. Because why not? Oh yeah, she goes to work. She doesn't like the old bitches who work there. They don't like her. They don't talk, so there's no real reason for her to be mentioned. She pervs over the muscle guy. I forget his name, to be honest. Randy, I want to say, but I might be wrong. But because she's so inexperienced or so plain or so boring, like she kind of knows that he would never be interested. And yet there's a whole bit when she leaves the house to go and like what's the wording? Stake it out. She goes to his house just to try and see if he's in there at night for something to do, by the sound from what I could gather from it. Maybe this was supposed to illustrate the mundanity of her existence or the completely listlessness of it, but that's all I could really extrapolate from why that was there. Because it wasn't like she was coming out with philosophical musings to really make you think like, yeah, that's an interesting perspective, Eileen. she was more she was like diet vanilla, like if anything, like there was no flavour to her whatsoever. Fucking hell. What? American Fiction was a good film. But yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure what else I've got to add, if in all honesty. I wouldn't recommend it if that wasn't obvious enough. I feel like I remember when I finished it, I kind of felt like this exhaustion, like I'd just like been going through the whole thing just waiting for something to happen, and then when it ended I was just like, I just felt cheated, to be honest. It's way longer than it should be as well. It should be 100 pages shorter, I would argue. There's no reason for it to be as long as it is. But I mean, this is the kind of shit. I mean, looking at this So we get this. So here we are. My name was Eileen Dunlop. Now you know me. I was 24 years old then, and I had a job that paid $57 a week as a kind of secretary at a private juvenile correctional facility for teenage boys. I think of it now as what it really was for all intents and purposes, a prison for boys. Clever. I will call it Moorhead. Delvin Moorhead was a terrible landlord I had years later, and so to use his name for such a place feels appropriate. That's the kind of shit there. It's self-indulgent bollocks. It's like, I don't give a fuck what your future was like, what you did, and like who you met later on. How is this interesting? That's what I'm trying to. The point I'm trying to get, and the novel is full of this crap. Like, that's the thing. It's like just random things mentioned, just for the whim, just for the. Oh, this is interesting because I have to say it, you know. And in a week I would run away from home and never go back. This is the story of how I disappeared. Well, it's not a story really, is it? Let's be honest. Someone else came into your life and you used it as an excuse to get the fuck out of Dodge, and that was it. Well done. Just calm it down. Calm it down. It's alright. Just need to stroke my own hair. I wish the dad beat her up more. Actually, at all. That would have been good. I kind of wanted Eileen to get the fuck kicked out of her. That would have been way better than what we got. And it's almost like Moshfegh realised how boring her own novel was. So at some point she started thinking about, okay, yeah, boy rape, daddy boy rape. Yeah, let's put that in there. Fucking finally something interesting to write. Fucking oh yeah. And then Mummy was helping, yeah, enema up the arse. She only did it because she didn't want to get infections up her old puss. Now we've got a story. Now we're cooking. Okay. This people are going to say I'm so dark. Fuck off. Shit. Overrated trash. Well, that's all I've got to say. Actually, I mean, you think Cows is self-published? This is published. Tell me which is better. Come on. Pen Pal, self-published. Way better than this shit. And I'm not even trying to debate that whole thing, to be honest. I'm kind of stunned. This is Penguin. Penguins have published this. Maybe I need to pretend I'm a chick, don't I? That's the Gabriella McKenna. Maybe that's the future. I need to think of it. Oh no, maybe it needs to be like a slightly diverse sounding surname. Then we could be working. I mean, I would argue that Ottessa Moshfegh has become popular because, one, she's brown, two, she has a name that sounds diverse and, you know, woke, and yet really she's just an American spoilt rich kid riding this gravy train all the way to the bank. But, you know, I don't want to cast aspersions or anything like that. I'm not suggesting that she only got published because of these kind of things. I am. Anyway, well, I guess we can. I think I'm done. I don't want to talk about this anymore. It's not very good. I don't mind her style so much. I could see potentially a decent novel, maybe. But when, I have to admit, I mean, it's kind of, it has put me off reading her stuff though. Reading this, it's garbage. It's one of those ones when it's almost like whenever I try to read something that's more modern and has been popular, they all feel the same. Like it feels like they come up with the same points. It's like a cult that's come about. Like the same with what was that trash? My Dark Vanessa. Shit. Like it's they have the same kind of little points, and the way they try and sum up or summarize their paragraphs or what they're trying to get at. It's like, fuck off. It's like, have you all got the same editor or something? And I don't understand. Maybe I'm just a lunatic and I'm seeing things as I want to see them, which is very possible, but I don't get it. It's fucking Haribo literature we've got these days. It's just so depressing. Well, there's one I thought the premise actually sounded kind of interesting, but then I looked into the publisher and I kind of thought, don't know, it kind of sounds like the same old crap. But it's called Yellowface, and it's by a Chinese looking woman who's actually American. And the whole thing is kind of about, she's a writer and she's best friends with another writer, both female, and her friend is much more successful. She's doing really well, but then she dies in a freak accident, and she takes her most recent manuscript and she basically whitewashes it, and then that enables her to get published. And it's supposed to be this whole very satirical kind of thing. It sounded intriguing, I'd give it that much, but when I looked into it a bit more, I kind of thought, it's probably going to be one of these things that like thinks it's being really clever and satirical, but it's actually still adhering to the status quo. It's just doing that kind of like ticklish kind of piss take, where it's just like, oh yeah, I'm not being serious, because obviously I still want to be in the group, but let's just laugh at ourselves a little bit. I don't know, maybe I'm being too harsh. I haven't read it, but when I look at these books, I'm just like, they all have this same vibe to them. What do I know? What do I know? And that by no means, that's not a suggestion for the next novel. But we can make it a bit longer, because I'm gonna have a bit of a break, actually, a couple of weeks. So if we want a slightly longer novel, that's fine with me. I'll come back and do a book club. So but that'll probably be near the end of the month. I'm mainly doing this because I'm tired and I want a break, but I'm also doing it because I'm not really getting anything from it financially. So I need to weigh that up, if I'm honest, because I do enjoy doing it, and the book club will stay. That's kind of, or at least for the foreseeable future, it will, because it's fun. Like, I'm enjoying it, despite what this stream might suggest. But yeah, well, that's all that needs to be said, to be honest. But the new Welbeck. Well, if you're a white woman, I would say it's still as easy. Isn't the new Welbeck like 800 pages or some shit? I mean, I'd be game, actually. Yeah, why not? When is it out? Can you look that up, please? I have heard, yeah, that it's out soon. I'll say it now. I've got a funny feeling I'm going to be disappointed with it, but I don't know. Time will tell. If anyone would like to spin the wheel on that subject, you know, now would be the time. Maybe I'll let you choose the book. But it's also, you know, I'm getting to the finalization stage, kind of the book I'm working on. I need to focus on that. And yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, if these streams don't bring anything in, it's a bit hard to justify doing them, to be just saying. I'm alright with doing them occasionally, but doing them weekly, I'm fucking tired. You think I'm sitting around doing nothing all week? I wish. 19th of September. I mean, that's not till quite a while away, man. It's like 12 days. I mean, I'd be game, but I'll probably leave it another week. Plus, I don't want to buy it. Yeah, 50 my ass. Alright, add another 45 and you can pick the book. And we'll do it in, what, 2 weeks. I'll be back. Yeah, 28th. I do apologise for the Eileen. I you know, it's going to happen from time to time. I mean, probably any time we read any female author currently in print, but no, I don't know. I feel like it's got nothing to do with gender. Really doesn't. It does have something to do with the type of literature that's getting put out there, though. Dumbed down bollocks. Where's the depth? Where's the soul? Where's the... I speak as if I'm an expert on modern literature, which I'm not, but every time, I mean, at least no, I'd say with Tender is the Flesh, like, at least that was entertaining and it had good pacing. It might have been a little bit generic, but it had something, I thought. And it had a style to it which I thought was not exactly unique, but it was, yeah, pulpy almost, kind of like it brought you into the world very easily. I actually thought, like, in terms of making a book that had so much gratuitous elements to it, so readable, was a testament to whatever her name is, her skill overall. I thought that was decent. Yeah, only if we can get the ebook. If I can't get my hands on it. But what we could do is just say, yeah, we'll do that next. And maybe I'll be back on the 28th. Maybe I won't. You know. What I was trying to suggest is if you want something before that, make it shorter so I can read that before. And then, yeah, move on to some Welbeck. And apparently it is his last novel. So I don't even know what point I'm trying to make there. As if it's some monumental kind of thing. Maybe it is. I don't know, but I doubt it. You know. It's only you two chatting. Like this, my creepy fucking viewership just sits there watching, putting pressure. Don't know what else to add, to be honest. Been watching Blue Eye Samurai recently. It's not bad. Quite enjoying it. It was a Netflix thing. It's an animation, but decent-ish story. It's not bad. Good animation, I would say, as well. Well, if you're into the kind of Japanese samurai stuff, which I am, I'd admit, yeah, I think it's worth a watch. What about a Kafka short story? Kafka? Bit of Kafka. Yeah, I've got a few episodes to go, but I've been quite impressed with it. It's good. I mean, especially when after reading this tripe, just in terms of just storytelling, it's good. Like it keeps you engaged. You're intrigued by the main character, but also just like the subplots that are going on, the other characters, the comedic relief, the world that it builds. All pretty fucking good, to be honest. Yeah. The Unbearable Lightness of Being. I mean, it's a good book to reread. I wouldn't. I'm not going to deny that. I feel like we should feature it at a different time. Personally, the Buzzati one you mentioned, sure, maybe, but I still like. I've said it before. Like, I just think if we're going to do it, we should do it for the Tartar Steppe first. And then maybe at some other point. I think Welbeck's a good choice. I just wish I could get reading it a bit quicker, but we need more suggestions. Come on, at least throw them out. We can put them on the list. I would reread what's it, the Mishima one, the sailor who fell from grace with the sea. I'd reread that. That would be intriguing to me to have another look at. That's reasonably short, but maybe The Tenant by Roland Tapor I would be intrigued to read again. In fact, I would be intrigued to read that again. That's actually fun as well to read. What else? Maybe some Bukowski. We got to have some Bukowski on here at some point, surely. I would vote Factotum, but I'd be fine with anything, really. And yeah, maybe some other new shit, basically. Let me have a... yeah, I read that a long time ago, but yeah, it wasn't bad. Quite enjoyed it. Don't know what I think of it now, but you just want to have a look at what else I got in my library. Oh yeah, I did read some Shirley Jackson recently. I mentioned it on Patreon if anyone wants to have a look at that. Interesting stories. I don't know, there's something about them kind of leaves you wanting a bit more, but there's definitely something that unnerves you reading them, and they stick with you quite well. And yeah, some of them are just like the premise of them is almost interesting enough on its own just to kind of put out there. But she has this way of kind of like don't really know. It's almost hard to describe, but she does definitely depict like an element of like oddity going on, and yet it's familiar. And yeah, I think that's a skill. I did also read Flannery O'Connor, A Good Man Is Hard to Find. I thought it was pretty strong, actually. Like, it's kind of interesting with short stories because I think a lot of the time when you're first reading it, it's almost like you come into it with a novel perspective almost. Unless you happen to be reading a lot of short stories, it's almost like you come into it with that movie or novel kind of outlook, but then when you actually get to the short story, it can feel a little bit jarring, or you feel like, I don't know, maybe more could be in there or whatever. But with that one, I felt like it was really, yeah, the way it builds up and the way the kind of the grandmother character especially was the way she acts and then the way she actually is, or more what she says and then how she behaves. It's kind of like, it's very, yeah, it's intriguing. What else have I got? Blood and Guts in High School is one I think I might have mentioned before. It's been on my list for a while. Sabbath Theatre, Philip Roth. Still haven't really looked into that. I'm not sure. Did I mention I read I'm Thinking of Ending Things? I think I might have done. Felt a bit of a waste of time, if I'm honest. Overall, I mean, if you've seen the film, don't bother. Like, not much point. The film's better overall, which is rare, but yeah, I found with that one it just had a lot less to say in novel format, which is intriguing, I suppose. Silence. Okay. I may have a look at that. Let's see if I can. The devil all the time. Yeah, that's true. I'll agree with you straight away. I bet it is better. Is Silence the one that is just looking at this? That wasn't the film that there was a recent film called this, and the Scorsese maybe. It's a long one with Liam Neeson. Probably someone says something about it. A Christian novel, potentially. Okay. Well, I think Welbeck is going to take the front line. Then maybe we'll do The Devil All the Time. Alright? Maybe. If anyone wants... Yeah. I got to plug this shit because... It isn't just the streams that I'm bitching about. It's I've done like 2 movie reviews that just get age gated and fucking copyright bullshit. Like it's a joke. So, and obviously I'm not getting a lot out of that kind of stuff anyway. But when I'm getting denied access to anything, it's a bit like, what's the fucking point in doing this? In general, I might as well just step back, disappear, and fucking play PlayStation, to be honest, because no longer human. I think you mentioned that one before. I'd be game. I think I'd be game for that. I mean, I did make a whole like hour-long video on that. So, I'm not sure I'd have anything else to say on it. Maybe, but... Yeah, well, I'm going to have this and then I'm going to fuck off, basically. There's a QR code. Mirrored thing. I hate mirrored bullshit here, where if you'd like to show your appreciation for the stream, hard rain falling. Yeah, well, something like that. I know times are tough. It's crazy. A lot of Japanese authors coming in. I mean, I haven't covered one yet, have I? I don't think. Tell you what, maybe a Murakami. Only because I think I've only read Norwegian Wood. So if it was IQ 84 or I can't think of another one, but yeah, maybe I'd be intrigued to read one of his again. See where that might go. Bit of Orwell at some point. It's got to be done. Maybe Coming Up for Air. I wouldn't mind rereading that one. Alright, shows what I know, I guess. Kafka on the Shore, yeah. Maybe something like that. What's the most misogynistic one? Is it Kafka on the Shore? To counter Eileen, it would be a welcome piece potentially. I can't. I can brain farting. You know, I need to find some more intriguing looking novels. But yeah, that's it. That's it, really. What else is there to say? Yeah, okay, we'll do. Is it? I think it's Annihilation, isn't it? Annihilation, the new Welbeck one. We'll do that next. That's fine by me. And if I feel like I need another week, then so be it, to be honest. It really depends when I can get my hands on it, because if I have to buy it, it's going to delay me. So but I wouldn't mind getting a copy of it, but it's weird that that's fucking even still in the pipeline, really, considering it's been out for what, it must be over a year, isn't it? I'm sure we were talking about this like quite a while back now. Yeah. Not at the moment, but that's another one I wouldn't be against reading. Are you a big reader of books that have been made into films? Because it seems like it. Or maybe it's just a coincidence. Is it 2 years? Fucking hell. That's sad. Why? Like, I don't get that. I think maybe that's why I feel a bit like indifferent to it in some ways, because it's like I know it's been out for a while and yet they haven't bothered making a fucking English translation of it. I mean, I think maybe it was leaked. Maybe that was the problem or something. So it was pushed out earlier because of that or something. And maybe they tried to ride the whole, oh yeah, it's only available in French or whatever, but they put it out in German pretty quickly. So, yeah. Alright, well, I'll look into, maybe I'll make a list at some point. But again, if you get on the Patreon, we can discuss this, you know, in its own little stream. Maybe we'll just dish out some ideas. See what one of the, I don't know. I do want to read good stuff overall. Like, I don't want to be here ranting about how shit something is. I'd rather do that less so than more so, if you know what I mean. It's going to be shit. You know it. You know it. The only thing that might keep you watching it is if they hire like some attractive women to be in the film. That would be the only reason. Because the plot isn't going to keep you going. Maybe the cinematography, if that's nice, maybe that will be more intriguing. But yeah, there is I'll admit, there's a part of me that's mildly intrigued, just to see like how would they make this cinematic, you know. But yeah, well, I'm outstaying my welcome here as it is, so I'm going to be off. I'll see you soon. It will be Welbeck then, I guess. And until then, I suppose, there's not much else to say. I've already been saying this shit for the past 10 minutes, so. See, the narrator of Eileen's rubbed off on me. Until then, I'll see you soon. Take it easy. Yada, yada, yada. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Until next time.